Hey guys, my name is Nina and today we're doing this. Welcome back to another episode of ROCTS. Since it was the week of Halloween, I decided to rewatch My Babysitter's a Vampire. So without further ado, let's get started.
Sorry, bats.
My blood's coming out.
Never really paid out.
Just stay out of sight.
Out. That seeks out.
May never figure that one out.
Freaked out.
Nosebleed and pass out.
Freaking me out.
Watch out.
We have to take it out.
About that?
Last thing to worry about, right?
You should be worried about him. Do something about it.
We were worried about you.
Nothing to worry about.
I'll think twice about it.
Don't worry about dinner. I'm worried about everyone else.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
So first I watched the expositional movie so that I was able to get the full picture. The movie starts out with the entire student body essentially going through the Twilight craze. Manny from Degrassi plays Bella, aka Rochelle, and Peter from Degrassi, who was her tormentor if you remember, plays Edward, or also known as Dirk Battison, in their Twilight ripoff called Dusk. Although later on in the series we meet a character from Dusk called Jakeward who looks exactly the same, so he's not like Jacob, but he is the equivalent to Edward, who is also Rochelle's love interest, so it's a bit confusing. What this little town of Whitechapel doesn't know is that vampires are real and their town is crawling with them. The head vampire Jesse, who is Truman in Life with Derek, is actually a very old cult leader vampire who founded the town back in the 1800s, and he was named Reverend Horace Black. The townspeople were able to vanquish his followers, and now he's out for revenge. He's attempting to capture 219 souls, which at first I thought was like a really arbitrary number, but it turns out that's the amount of his followers that were killed. Sarah, who is unconsensually made into a fledgling by her ex-boyfriend Jesse, takes Erica's place in babysitting for the Morgans. Sarah, Ethan, and Benny are able to thwart Jesse's plans with the help of their friend Rory and Benny's grandmother. Erica wasn't much help because she was actually on the side of the vampires for the most part. We discovered that Ethan is a seer and Benny is a spellmaster and Benny's grandmother is an earth priestess. I'm not too sure why Benny is a spellmaster and his grandmother is an earth priestess and they're not like the same, because basically they just have magical powers, but that's how it's described. Both Erica and Rory become full vampires in the movie after they're forced to drink human blood. Or Rory's kind of forced, whereas Erica does it willingly. Here are a few things that stood out to me about the movie. Firstly, the effects. The effects are pretty bad, but I guess that's, understandable for a made-for-TV movie. But what is weird is that for every single vampire death, they decided to do a different effect. Maybe it was because each death was caused by something different, like a stake or holy water or a spell. But it's it would have been more cohesive if they had the same effect for every vampire death. As it is, it kind of looks like they didn't know what they wanted to do, and they decided to do everything. Another thing that I clocked was that obviously they were trying to keep the language PG.
We got a fresh supply of anti-vampire.
Ow! What the heck?
Ow!
What the heck? Ow! What the heck?
So this is why I always get better marks than me in English, huh?
Yeah. That and I don't call the teacher fart head to his face.
Point taken.
Hasta la vista, dorks.
And I just found it really funny considering it was very out of place for the age that these people are supposed to be. What was especially shocking though was that Rory fully gives the middle finger in episode 8. He gives the middle finger to a computer, but it's fully visible, fully on screen, and it made me pause and rewind to really double check that actually happened. Especially considering they're trying to keep the language PG, but it's fully okay that he just flips the computer off. It's a computer, but we see his finger do the gesture. Also, in the movie, there are a few plot holes that went unaddressed, so let's talk about those. So at some point, Ethan sees a vision of a gravestone that has the year someone was born and the year someone died, and the numbers rearrange into the number 219 to indicate the amount of souls that Jesse wants to steal back. But it doesn't make any sense as to why those numbers rearranged into 219, as if the dates on the gravestone were a cryptic message in order to show the amount of souls that were killed that day. But it, like I said, it doesn't make any sense, especially considering the person on the gravestone, Shirley Ingrid, never comes back in the storyline. She's not relevant. We don't know who she is. So it's it just doesn't make sense. Also, when Benny and Ethan are first attacked in Ethan's house, they leave a big mess. The fight leaves a huge mess, and the three of them comment on how big of a mess it is.
What? This? This is nothing.
But then later on, their parents come home and the mess is just completely cleaned up besides the hole in Ethan's door. And it's like, how did you do that? And finally, at the end of the movie, the principal is talking to the press about what had happened at the theater, and he was saying, oh, it's just rumors, they're unsubstantiated, like nothing went down. But it's like, how do you just explain all of the missing people? Like, yes, Jesse didn't complete his plan to steal 219 souls, but he still stole quite a few. Like, must be people just missing in the town. How do they explain that away? Anyway, the movie was just not as good as I remember, but let's move on to the show. The show follows the 5 main characters and their various encounters with supernatural entities. In the 2 seasons that they made, I think they fully covered their bases, from vampires, werewolves, and ghosts, to mummies, sirens, and even a Franken hockey player. I don't think that there was one mythical creature that they skipped over. The show is immensely better than the movie, especially in the quality and the writing. And at times, despite this being a kid's show, this show actually made me laugh, which is impressive compared to, say, Life with Derek.
But we will.
You.
Yeah, that's right. Us.
Yeah, and me. Too. I'm Benny.
Hi, Ethan. I like your shirt.
Thanks. It's a small.
By the way, your nerve box has been beeping for the last 6 minutes.
You know what's going on here? Yeah. The music industry is finally fighting back at illegal downloads.
What do we do? I mean, Doug's our hero, and I don't want to use any of my arcane power to rip his soul from his mortal form.
Yeah, good thing you're bad at magic.
But it told us to let go!
Of course it did. It's a ghost stuck in the Netherlands and no one wants out!
I think you mean Netherworld!
Yeah, that!
Some of my best friends are vampires. Erica, Rory.
Wait, Rory's your friend? And you admit it? Dude, that's just messed up.
You are impure. You are cursed. You are not the chosen one.
Great, but you rubbed oil all over him, and he's not even pure.
One thing that did not age well, though, is the micromisogyny and stereotyping of females. In episode 2, Ethan and Benny pretend to be girls so that they can keep an eye on Erica on the cheerleading squad, because they want to make sure that she's not gonna attack anybody. This in itself is not a huge problem, like them dressing as girls, but it just makes me question, like, why couldn't they try out for the cheerleading team as themselves? Like, men could be on the cheerleading team. They also heavily objectify the women in this episode. Like, the guys are really excited to go to the showers with them, and then there's a slumber party scene where the girls have a pillow fight. And the pillow fight in itself is stereotyping, but the way the guys react to the pillow fight, like it's so hot, is like, come on. And it's also a little creepy for a kid's show, and there's a part where Sarah tells Benny to go take a cold shower.
Go practice your cheers and have a cold shower.
If you insist.
Which is like, what are we doing here? And then in the 5th episode, Benny sells his grandmother's old camera without knowing that it has the ability to create evil twins. And the head of the yearbook, Hannah, takes a photo of herself and creates an evil twin, and Ethan is wondering what to do about it. Benny mentions she's just a girl, and then Ethan says,
What's the worst she can do? Make fun of someone's shoes on Facebook?
Exactly.
Again, belittling and stereotyping women as a whole. Speaking of that episode, considering the way that Hannah is behaving, the teacher is way too nonchalant about her behavior and treatment of others.
Hey. Okay. Oh, good on you for expressing yourself.
I thought Hannah was taking the photos.
Oh, Hannah was making the other students cry, so I went ahead and took over.
He really needs to do his job and discipline her, even though she probably won't listen because she's like an evil clone and all that. But, like, he should, try to do more than what he's doing. On the topic of non-believable writing and plot holes, let's get into some. Starting light, the blood in the universe is like juice. Like, it's so thin and watery. And when it's, like, on the vampire's teeth, it kind of looks like a candy coating. In episode 4, Ethan's sister Jane performs a spell to bring her doll back to life. Now, Benny is a spellmaster and therefore able to perform magic, but how is Jane able to do it? She does recite a spell with the grandmother in the movie, but I don't think that was implying that she has magic as well. Or can anyone perform magic as long as they know the spell? In episode 6, Ethan accidentally summons a ghost that was trapped inside their school's only trophy. The ghost gets really mad when Benny tries to vanquish him, and he says,
So you want to play hardball, huh, boy?
But all he ends up doing is pulling a few items off the shelf behind them, like, damn, I guess he really meant business. In episode 9, we encounter a werewolf that is trying to get Ethan's help to find a cure for his lycanthropy. But this guy is meant to be in high school? Like, maybe his hairiness is making him look older than he is, but I really think that he's way too old for high school. even if he had shaved. In the 5th episode of season 2, they cast Bindi Irwin, which is kind of funny because in the previous episode about the mutant crocodile, they mention her father, Steve Irwin. In episode 10, Benny mentions that there are only 2 ways to be cool, either join a band or join the hockey team. And he says that all we can do is join the hockey team because we can't join a band. But it doesn't make any sense because in the very previous episode, they had joined a band to fight the siren. So they could easily form the band again. Also, why are they trying out for hockey when the team already existed? Like, we've already seen the hockey players in the hallways. This episode is actually about how the coach wanted to form a Franken hockey player to make the best hockey player ever. And what's funny is that this hockey player is not a goalie, but he wears a goalie mask when he plays the game. And finally, in the finale of season 1, Jesse comes back to life. In the movie, his body disintegrates completely, and we have no idea really what happens to his soul, but it just sort of dissipates. Like, we don't see his soul go into the cubulae animus. How is his body now fully intact in the ground, and how is his soul inside the cubulae animus able to come out and then reconnect with his body? Like, his body should be gone completely into dust, and I don't think his soul ever went into the box, or at least it wasn't shown going into the box. A lot of questions, but I will say that I do really like that Jesse comes back. Near the end of season 1, they tap into more long-form storytelling where they use the cubulae animus from the movie so that they can trap a ghost that was possessing Sarah, and in turn, they bring back Jesse from the movie. I thought this might be the start of more long-form storytelling, but it abruptly ends because they really only use Jesse as a plot point to turn Sarah into a real vampire. Jesse bites Ethan, and in order to save him, she sucks out the venom, essentially drinking human blood. Jesse simply disappears again, and for the most part, season 2 goes back to being episodic. Since the first episode of season 2 mentions Sarah starting to deal with her new vampire self and also trying to find Jesse in order to make him pay for turning her, I thought that it would follow this sort of plotline, but they end up dropping it until the very end. It's only in episode 8 when we start to see longer form storytelling with the foreshadowing of the hooded sorcerer. Ethan is trapped in an alternate dimension created by Benny's grandmother in order to teach the 3 that they need to work together to conquer their fears. Ethan's fear was supposed to be losing the ones close to him, so in his little dimensional world, he was not supposed to have anyone with him. When he mentions to the grandmother that he had this hooded sorcerer in his world, she says, "This must be a sign of the evil to come." This only comes back though in episode 12 when we find out that the new vice principal is actually the hooded sorcerer who is out for revenge against the vampires who conquered his ancestor. Turns out that Jesse was actually one of the vampires that fought his ancestor, and he hid the lucifractor in town. This is the orb that is able to wipe out vampires. So in order to fight this new evil villain, Ethan actually enlists the help of Jesse and he rejoins the group. In this episode, we actually learn that Ethan's powers have grown and he actually now has the ability to go into other people's minds, implying that the story will continue into the next season and that there's more to find out about this town and their powers. Unfortunately, the show did not get picked up for a 3rd season, so we actually don't get to learn more about his abilities, and the episode actually ends on a cliffhanger. The vice principal succeeds in his quest to detonate the vampire bomb, and we don't know if Sarah, Benny, Ethan, and Jesse are caught in the crossfire. Rory and Erica are actually being led away by the leader of the vampire council, so we know that they're safe, but it really sucks that we don't get to know what happens to the rest of them. It was also just getting good. Like, we were getting more lore. But alas, it's how it be. Let's dive deeper into the characters.
Oh, she saw us. What do we do?
Just act natural.
Oh, I'm naturally nervous, so that should be easy.
To be honest, there's not much to say about Ethan. He's the generic main character in which anyone can see themselves. He's smart and nerdy/geeky, and he's a seer, but we don't really know why or how. There's a scene in the movie where Ethan actually asks his mom if she's ever had experiences with visions or anything like that, and she says no, not really. There was one time when he was a baby that she saw him all grown up, but nothing like he's describing. It's weird though that she's unconcerned about him getting visions.
You ever, see things? Like, things that aren't there?
Are we, talking about drugs?
No, like a vision? Or strange images that just appear?
No, I don't think so, honey.
After she confirmed that it wasn't drugs, she was just like, oh, okay. Anyway, I don't really think that this interaction was to confirm that she has the gift as well, which makes me wonder why he never really asked his dad. There's a funny moment where he gets a vision and the actor does the seer face before they even add the effects in, and it makes him look kind of silly. Other than that, Ethan is pretty one-dimensional.
Come on, Sarah. Can't you feel it? Your body knows what it wants.
Sarah is considered to be the hot, cool, older girl. Funnily enough, even though the show is called My Babysitter's a Vampire, she's actually not a vampire. She's a fledgling, and she doesn't even turn into a vampire until season 2. Fledglings are what you are when you're bit by a vampire, but you haven't yet drank human blood. Their concept of vampirism is a little shoddy in this series. She apparently can't push the door when the bed is in the way, but she's supposedly supposed to have superhuman strength, even as a fledgling. Also, they have the ability to run super fast like in Twilight and the Vampire Diaries, but in the scene where they're being chased by the group of vampires, they're able to get away in a car. They don't even animate them to look like they had super speed. And considering that she was just bitten and is only a fledgling, when she mentions that
Vampires are super territorial.
I wonder how she even knows about that. Even Erica, who is super into being a vampire, is still learning, even in season 2. Yet we're supposed to believe that Sarah just knows this stuff. When she finally becomes a full vampire, her personality changes. She becomes more confident and has more of an edge, kind of like what happens to Elena in the Vampire Diaries. Her character actually parallels Elena in many ways. She never even wanted to become a vampire, and in the first season she's constantly battling her urges to drink human blood so she won't fully turn. Erica's trying to convince her to just let it happen, but Sarah sticks to her principles, although the differences would be minor. She's already undead, and all that would change is her strength and her ability to fly. Yeah, the vampires in this show fly. She doesn't continue to drink animal blood like Elena does, but she has Benny's grandmother create a blood substitute for her. In the episode where the werewolf is trying to look for a cure for his lycanthropy, she actually tries to beat him to the cure so that she can take it for herself and cure herself of her vampirism. Although she ends up sacrificing it to save her friends from the werewolf, who turns out to be Ethan because Benny accidentally spelled him into one. And in season 2, after she becomes a full vampire to save Ethan, she struggles to come to terms with her new immortal life. Overall, I'd say that her character has actually the deepest motivations and development, which is refreshing to see.
Being undead is the bomb, right? Creatures of the night. What's that?
Hey, don't overdo it.
Benny is the confident and unlucky in love, comedic relief best friend. He is also a novice spellmaster. Unlike other characters in his role, he is not afraid to talk to girls, but is always striking out. For example, in the movie he has a crush on Erica, and he's wondering if Erica is going to be the Morgan's babysitter. And instead of sitting there just contemplating it, he actually goes,
I'm gonna go find out.
and walks right on over to ask. He even kisses the popcorn girl out of the blue in the big vampire battle scene. In the first episode, he has a crush on a girl named Della whose dog just died. In order to impress her, he actually brings her dog back to life, and as you can imagine, that goes horribly wrong. And side note, in the movie he learns that he's a spellmaster, but he doesn't actually use any magic. But then come to the first episode of the series, he's able to conjure flowers just like that, and he can bring dogs back to life. But I digress. In the end, small animals are coming back to life, being possessed by demon souls, and they once again have to kill Della's dog. They disintegrate him into the pasta sauce, and when Ethan and his mom are fighting over the bowl, they drop it and his collar falls onto the floor. Della asks in a shocked voice if that's her dog, and for some reason Ethan says,
Yeah, that's him. Kinda.
why would he admit to that? What does she even think happened now, that they were trying to cook her dog into food? In episode 4, when Jane brings her doll to life, Rory starts dating it. Benny comments,
Can't believe you got a girlfriend before me.
and in episode 8, he mentions that he carved his name, plus the name of all of his crushes, into the killer tree.
I carved my name into it. Benny loves Sally. And Beth. Kylie. Della. Erica.
Benny!
In the final episode of season 1, he also wonders if he still has a shot with Della. All this further reiterating his failed Casanova persona. He is also generally a funny, goofy guy, and the main source of my laughter while watching.
Here's a thought. What if this is some publicity stunt thing for that stupid Dusk movie? If this is a punk, I knew it all along! Evasive maneuvers. Alpha Foxtrot Delta 6. Engage!
He is super geeky, obsessed with the supernatural, and is always wearing striped shirts. Peter seems to think that he looks like a young version of Damon Salvatore. I don't see it, but can you tell that we're rewatching the Vampire Diaries? Anyway, in the movie, his grandma out of nowhere mentions that she is totally aware of the vampires and that she's an earth priestess and that Benny is a spellmaster. Throughout the show, Benny is learning magic and learning how to use his spell book. For the most part, he's a little inept and he's always messing up in one way or another, like how he accidentally made Ethan into a werewolf. And a lot of the time, he's actually accidentally saying the spell backwards somehow. This ineptitude actually spills over to other aspects of his life. In episode 3, he actually discovers that Erica and Rory are planning to raid the blood donor truck, and he tells this to Ethan.
Dude, Rory and Erica are gonna hit the donor van behind the school.
Then when he arrives to school, he asks Ethan,
Where's Rory and Erica?
And Ethan responds,
We figured out they were planning to rob the blood truck.
and I'm just like, do they both not realize that that information came from Benny? Like, Benny should know this already. He's the one that told Ethan. In episode 4, he mentions that he's going to try to figure out what the spell is that Jane used to bring her doll back to life. It's only at 18 minutes into the episode that he brings this up again. Was he not trying to figure this out the whole time, or is school more important to these guys than the people in the Vampire Diaries? Those guys are always skipping class to try to fight the supernatural. And then in episode 12, Ethan, Benny, and Rory try to use a Ouija board, and Benny, for some reason, is totally not afraid of an evil spirit coming from the board, even though it's very likely that it happens considering all of the evil freaking creatures that they've encountered this whole season.
Look, we're hanging out with vampires. We've taken down zombies. We pruned a haunted tree last month. What's a little voice from beyond?
All in all, he's a funny, silly goofball getting into all sorts of shenanigans. Moving on to Rory.
You're a fledgling too?
Heck no. I'm rocking the full-on vampire action, dude. The big V. Can I get a what?
What?
Rory is the trio's weirdo sidekick. He's basically a big dum-dum that gets himself turned into a vampire. After the big battle in the movie, he promises to stop drinking human blood, and so throughout the series you see him drinking blood from small animals that he occasionally actually brings to school. Here are some examples of him being dumb. In episode 1, he decides to go by the vampire ninja and pops up out of nowhere in random situations. He's tasked with playing the flute that will attract all of the small possessed animals in order to destroy them, but instead he actually records himself playing the flute and accidentally drops the recording down the Morgan's chimney, effectively attracting all of the demonic animals to Ethan's house during a very important dinner for his dad. He has his boss over, who happens to be Della's dad. He proposes a solution involving Santa Claus, which apparently is a common occurrence.
Hey, relax. I know a way to get it back. When Santa comes...
Rory, shut up! You know the rules about plans involving Santa.
In the second episode, he is completely duped by Ethan and Benny's disguises, despite them looking exactly how they always look. But to give him credit, most of the characters in that episode are completely duped by their disguise, besides Sarah. In episode 7, he calls Benny's grandma and she answers the phone the way he normally speaks, and he rudely dismisses her as if she's the one being weird.
Rory, how's it hanging, bro?
Good. It's hanging good.
How dare he? That was hilarious. In episode 8, when Ethan and Benny are trying to solve the killer tree problem, he says this.
Oh, man. I was really hoping you guys would have this fixed by now.
Which I thought was really funny and almost worthy of a spit take. Like, okay, Rory's throwing a little bit of shade. Plus, this is the episode where he actually flips off a computer blatantly. And despite him being the dumb one most of the time, in episode 12, when Ethan and Benny are fighting over why the Cubulate Animus device is not working, Rory is actually the voice of reason and suggests the power button. He comes in handy a lot of the time. Too bad they treat him poorly and don't appreciate his effort and loyalty. I'll get more into that in the relationship section, but for now, let's move on to Erica.
Geek and his gizmos. You seem happy. But that'll change. All these techno toys seem fragile to me.
Played by Kate Todd from Radio Free Roscoe, Erica actually starts out as a dusk-obsessed geek. In the movie, she feels like a loser and thought that Sarah was ignoring her. In reality, Sarah was just trying to fend off Jesse, who was trying to pressure her into becoming a vampire, and she just wanted to keep Erica away from it. Erica tries to confront her about how distant she's been, and without fully understanding the situation, she decides to go with the vampires, thinking that she'll be better off. Once she finds out that they're real vampires, though, she doesn't shy away from it and she fully commits to becoming one herself. Now she's more confident and more cutthroat. She even gets with Jesse, despite that being her best friend's ex-boyfriend, and despite being turned by the other guy. In episode 2, she decides to go out for the cheerleading squad.
You know, I've always wanted to be a cheerleader, and now that I'm really hot, I can.
I mean, all she did was let her hair down and take off her glasses, but sure. The others suspect that she has ulterior motives for joining the cheerleading squad, so they keep an eye on her. It turns out that she actually wants revenge on the head cheerleader who treated her poorly when she was a geek. In a funny turn of events, the head cheerleader is actually an old witch who is also trying to get revenge for how she herself was treated in school. Despite this setup, they don't use it as an opportunity to teach Erica to be more understanding or something like that. Erica remains a cutthroat vampire. Pun intended. She actually kind of reminds me of Caroline. When Sarah becomes a vampire, she's upset and she yearns for her old human life. But when Erica turns, she thrives and becomes a whole new confident person. Sarah and Rory don't drink human blood, but Erica doesn't care and she just takes what she wants, even trying to pressure Sarah to do the same. As much as she's portraying this new cool girl persona, she's still a geek at heart. In episode 7, Benny brews this new love potion that makes girls fall in love with him. And in order to get Erica to smell it, he says that it's a new dusk perfume. In episode 9, she quotes a part of the book to the werewolf in order to seduce him. She's clearly still obsessed with the franchise. In episode 8, she discovers that she's into the same band as Rory, and despite trying to play it cool, she comes around to geek about it. And requests for Rory to get a download of the concert video that she's been trying to find for so long. And finally, in season 2, episode 4, when the boys are trying to brew a concoction in order to blow up the mutant crocodile, she informs them that their ratios are off. She's always going to be that geeky nerd under her new hot girl image. And that makes for a great duality. It sucks that we couldn't see her character grow even more if the series continued.
It'll be an incredible night. Like something out of a movie. Enough talk. We're all hungry, the moon is full. Let's eat.
Jesse is the head vampire of the school vampire group. Like I said earlier, he turns out to be Reverend Horace Black, who is the vampire leader of a cult from the 1800s. Since he is a very old and powerful vampire, he actually has the ability to glamour, which is the equivalent of compulsion in the Vampire Diaries. After he inexplicably returns in season 1 and forces Sarah to become a full vampire, he disappears again. We find out that it's actually because the Vampire Council deemed him too dangerous and unpredictable, so they banished him. Once the council started running away from the Lucifractor, he's actually able to return and help the group, for some reason. The first time that he returned, he was only there because he wanted to try to get Sarah to run away with him. When she rejected him, he took it out on Ethan. Now, this time that he returns, I'm not too sure what his motivations are, other than maybe trying to get revenge on the descendant of the sorcerer that he fought with back in the day, but it really seemed like he was over and done with seeking revenge. Or maybe he's there to try to woo Sarah again. If there were to be more seasons, I would hope that he would become a more prominent character, because he really did make for an interesting wedge between Sarah and Ethan.
I am so done with cheerleading.
Agreed.
Smart kids. All that jumping around is fun, but what you're left with is saggy pom-poms.
Benny's grandmother is ultimately used as the wise, knowledgeable encyclopedia on the supernatural. What I find funny about her is how little she actually intervenes or even helps them. She'll give them information, but make them sort it out on their own. In the 7th episode, for example, when Benny makes a love potion, he accidentally drops it, and then it gets into the ventilation system in the school, and so, like, all of the girls in school start falling in love with them. When they tell Benny's grandmother about this, she looks at them startled and says that the girls are going to start to hate them just as much as they started to love them. My question is, if the spellbook is so dangerous and has spells in there that can go horribly wrong, A, why did she give it to Benny? And B, why doesn't she help Benny or at least teach him or show him how to do the magic? And why is she literally okay with them potentially actually being murdered by these girls and not giving them any solutions to their problem? She just lets them get threatened by the girls' boyfriends and then walks out the door and goes, good luck. She doesn't even give them any possible fixes or any idea of how to deal with the problem of the girls who are going to come and attack them. And in season 2, episode 3, when Ethan accidentally revives an old ghost vampire by simply touching his car, she blames them for the ghost attacks.
That kid doesn't know it, but his days are numbered thanks to you two.
We must warn him.
All he did was touch a car that he was going to potentially buy. Give him a break. And she wants them to go and save this kid? 2 dingus teenagers? She'll just sit back and hope for the best? It's honestly kind of funny how little she cares about their antics. I guess she just trusts that they're going to figure it out. On to the next. First, let's start with the friendships.
It was gonna be great. Maybe, but not as awesome as the night where I dressed up as butter and you were salt when we did the popcorn dance at the theater.
Pop, pop, pop. Corn, corn, corn. $6 for a small.
Apparently these two are best friends, but they're literally always bickering or selfishly ditching one another. Even before Erica became a vampire, they were butting heads over Sarah ditching Erica. After Erica turns, she flips this on its head. In the first episode, Sarah's trying to raise money to get herself a car, and Erica refuses to help her. And Sarah never trusts Erica not to go and bite people's heads off, and so she's always keeping a close eye on her, like in the cheerleading episode or the episode where Erica's trying to get close to the wrestler. In the 8th episode, Erica ditches Sarah for a guy that she met when they were waiting in line at the movie theater. She's really only nice to her in the end of the first season when she fully turns into a vampire.
Welcome to the rest of your life, girlfriend. When you're ready, we will be there for you.
But even then, she continues to bash her or skip out on her friendship duties when they don't appeal to her. When the council calls Sarah to come in, Erica stands up for her, but at the same time insults her.
Sarah's always done her own thing. Sometimes she's not even any fun.
And in the Siren episode, Erica promises to do the talent show with Sarah, but abandons her simply because she doesn't feel like it. I don't understand why they're still friends with each other. There's like no loyalty whatsoever, and Erica continues to be a bad friend to Sarah right to the end. It's very strange. Sarah just brushes it off as if, oh, that's just Erica.
Dude, relax. Can't you see? They know what they're up against. In their eyes, we're the grown-ups.
Yeah, grown-ups. Let's go play video games.
Yes! Yes!
Speaking of bad friends, Benny and Ethan are always bad-mouthing Rory behind his back. When we meet Rory initially, he's in line at the cafeteria, and when he calls them over, they give this sort of, ugh, not this guy type of faces. When he calls him on the phone later, Benny even says, do we even bother picking up? And when they discover that he's actually at the vampire party, they even debate whether to even save him. He's your friend, you're just gonna let him be turned into a vampire? They continue to treat him like an annoying younger brother throughout the show. In the werewolf episode, Rory comes up to them and asks if they're free to hang out over the weekend, and this is how Ethan responds.
Sorry, Rory. We're going to the, garlic and tanning bed convention. It'd be so cool if you came, but, you know, you'd burst into flames.
Granted, his excuse is that if the jock is actually a werewolf, vampires and werewolves are, mortal enemies, and he doesn't want to put Rory at risk. But if that's the case, why wouldn't he just tell that to Rory? Why wouldn't he just be honest and be like, hey, I'm just a little worried that this guy's a werewolf and, you're a vampire, and it might not work very well. And then in the episode where Ethan and Benny are stuck in the classroom warding off zombies, Ethan suggests calling Rory, and Benny says,
Rory? Is it that bad?
Is he that bad? Damn! And then, in the Siren episode, Rory's actually going to try out for the talent show as well as MC Monster Bad, and he asks Ethan and Benny if they want to come watch him practice at the open mic night. Benny just laughs at the suggestion, and this time Rory actually seems pretty upset about it. The way they treat him is such a shame because he's always there to help them out, and they just take him for granted. Now on to the romantic relationships.
In a few days, when I'm strong enough, I'm leaving. There's nothing for me here, except you. Join me.
So as I mentioned, Sarah and Jesse are actually a lot more complicated than you might think. They were already dating at the beginning of the movie, and at some stage off screen, he asks her if she likes vampires. She says yes, and then he bites her, taking that as an invitation. After this, he probably explains to her that she has to drink human blood in order to become a full vampire, or after a while, her mortal body will die. She seems to grapple with the idea of fully turning into a vampire, while he's pressuring her into it. She ultimately decides that she doesn't want to, especially considering he is majorly pressuring her. He then throws her onto the Morgan's roof, effectively breaking up with her. Later on in the movie, it seems like he's moved on with Erica because she's fully embraced becoming a vampire. Which is strange because she was flirting with the other vampire, and the other vampire is the one who turned him, but she somehow ended up being with Jesse. It's almost as if he's only with Erica to make Sarah jealous. Of course, at the end of the movie, they defeat Jesse, but in the 13th episode, he comes back to try to get Sarah to go and run away with him. Go and be with him, together forever. Immortals, in love. He points out that she's immortal and that she'll always be 17, while her friends are going to grow up and grow old and grow out of her. Well, not grow out of her, but grow away from her. He's clearly in love with her, and yet he agreed to go to the dance with Erica. Was it again to make Sarah jealous, or was it to use Erica by compelling her to try to get Sarah to go with him? Either way, I feel bad for Erica because it does seem like she has a little bit of a crush on Jesse, and he's just using her. When Sarah once again rejects him, he bites Ethan out of retaliation or jealousy, forcing her to drink his blood in order to save him. Although, really, couldn't Erica or even Rory have done it? And then for some inexplicable reason, Sarah wears the bracelet that Jesse gifted her to her first date with Ethan. When Ethan touches the bracelet, he's actually able to communicate with Jesse, and that's how he actually brings Jesse back to help them against the sorcerer. When he comes back this time, there isn't really a hint of romance, but I'd like to think that if the series continued, maybe a love triangle would have formed, especially considering Ethan and Sarah were being really dumb about their date. Speaking of which...
I thought I was picking you up.
I thought I was picking you up.
I was gonna buy you a pair of Heckbot's earrings, but thought you might like this better.
Thanks.
This relationship is a really slow burn. I don't even know if Sarah ever really becomes interested in fully dating Ethan, even after she agrees to a date. In the movie, Ethan bumps into Sarah, causing her to spill food all over her shirt. Then when she's over babysitting, really just pretending to babysit to hide from Jesse's cronies, Ethan's sister spills a fudgesicle on his shirt, and Sarah says,
I guess now we're even.
Hey, at least she remembers who he is. There are a few instances in the show after this that could indicate that they're going down the path of having a relationship, but at the same time, Sarah always reverts back to only seeing him as a friend. But let's talk about the little moments, and you tell me what you think. In episode 5, Erica mentions to Sarah that she's slowly developing the same mannerisms as Ethan, including snorting when she laughs. In the 6th episode, Ethan has Benny spy on Sarah to see if she's interested in one of the school wrestlers, and he assumes that she's flirting with him. This makes Ethan jealous, but in the end, Sarah confirms that she was only trying to figure out if Erica had turned him into a vampire. This clarifies the text that Sarah had sent him asking him to keep Saturday free. Egged on by the ghost coach, he had assumed that she was potentially asking him to go on a date, but she confirms that she only wanted him to keep it open in case she needed him as backup in order to take down the potential jock vampire. But then she says,
if we're not catching vampires, maybe we could go catch a movie?
Once again implying a date, but then we cut to them on a couch with his sister and also Benny and Rory. What a roller coaster so far. Episode 7 starts with Benny and Ethan practicing to ask her out. Then he uses a love potion on her instead, and we all know how that turns out, even though for a second she was totally into him and giving him all the love. In episode 9, when Ethan accidentally gets turned into a werewolf, he hides himself from Sarah so that she doesn't see him that way. When she leaves, he shows himself to Benny, implying that he was only hiding for her sake. In the 12th episode, Sarah is over babysitting, and she asks Benny to move over on the couch so that she can sit next to Ethan. But she denies doing it because she wants to canoodle. When Ethan says,
as if canoodling is the absolute last thing I want to do,
she gives him a look like she's a little hurt. It can be read like she's hurt in general because she's like unworthy of being canoodled, or hurt because she secretly does want to be canoodled by Ethan. Maybe the latter is more likely because does it really matter where she sits? There was plenty of room on the couch for the three of them, and she could have sat on Benny's side, and yet she pushed to sit next to Ethan specifically. And then, of course, in the finale, Ethan is bitten by Jesse, and Sarah heroically saves him from vampirism, even though she clearly wasn't the only one who could have done it. If anything, she cares a lot about him. Jumping to the second season, Ethan wants to learn how to drive with Sarah in order to spend more time with her. He also joins the school play to get closer to her. In the 7th episode, Sarah ends up dating a mummy come back to life. He's romantic and totally wooing her, but he wants to take her to the underworld. As usual, Ethan and Benny save the day, and she shows him appreciation. Now having seen her respond well to the mummy's romancing, he writes her a poem, but before he can give it to her, she says,
as for me, I'm done with romance for a long time. It's way better to have friends.
And Ethan looks defeated. In the Halloween episode, Rory goes around wearing a mask that gives him the power to turn people into what they are dressed as. For the party, Ethan is dressed as Jakeward, and Sarah is dressed as Rochelle, the love interests in the Dusk series. When they're turned into the real characters, they fall in love and almost kiss, but the spell is broken before they have a chance to. In my opinion, they should have kissed and then woken up in the middle of it, but that's just me. It's a kid's show, so... In the second to last episode of the whole series, Ethan finally asks her on a date, but she responds way too nonchalant about it.
Sure. What the heck?
She even denies its credibility to Erica.
It's not a date. It's just two friends having a date.
And she even wears the bracelet that Jesse gifted her to their date. And on top of all that, when things go wrong during the date, like normal supernatural things that happen to them all the time, she blames Ethan for it. This leads to both of them saying that the date was a mistake, both of them not really meaning it. Ethan goes to try to talk to her again about it, but she's busy in class, so she shoos him away. He then goes to tell Benny that she wouldn't talk to me. She was in the middle of class. Maybe pick a better time to pull her aside. Sadly, their relationship never comes to fruition because the season ends and they never resolve their communication problems.
Now's your chance. Go.
You got it, hot stuff.
Don't call me that.
Good idea. Switching to alternate code names. Sweet cheeks.
Okay, I know that this one is a little bit of a funny one, but they do have a few moments. In the episode where they're trying to steal the donor blood, they get locked in the back of the donor truck. In order to shut Rory up, Erica actually kisses him. At least that's her excuse, but in the end, when they're asking her if she wants a ride home, she says, no, Rory and I can, practice flying, implying that she wants to spend more time with him. But really, I think she dupes him again into stealing the blood, because at the end she has a fridge full of blood and he's locked outside. In the doll episode, Erica does Sarah a favor and tries to seduce Rory in order to get him away from his doll girlfriend. And then of course, as we know, the two share a love for the same band. And Rory says,
we're practically soulmates.
When she comes back and asks him to burn her a copy of the DVD that he was talking about, he takes it as if it's a date. When she finally comes to meet him, he says,
you look really pretty.
Thanks.
She shuts him down and leaves him to be taken by the killer tree. In the end, he stands up to her for ditching him, but she's able to seduce him in order to get the DVD. And then, skipping to the 3rd episode in season 2, she actually convinces him to try to steal the vampire ghost car thing. She has some kind of power over him.
Hey there, handsome.
You're talking to me. In school.
There's other things I'd like to do in school.
Huh?
This one did not have enough time to develop, but I guess none of them really did. This combination I think would have been my favorite if they had time to fully flesh it out. Hear me out. Benny already likes Erica in the beginning of the movie because she's geeky, not in spite of it. In the Love Potion episode, he actually uses the potion on Erica in order for her to fall in love with him. And of course, throughout the first season, he occasionally mentions her appearance and his previous crush on her. Season 2 is really when they start to build towards something actually happening between the two of them, though. In the 5th episode, they both tried to sign up for the school play at the same time, and their hands touch reaching for the pen, and they have a bit of a moment. In the following episode, Erica and Sarah are becoming weak because they haven't had enough blood. All of the adults in the town have been spelled to disappear, and so Erica does not have access to adult blood, and she refuses to drink from kids or teenagers because she considers them like junk food. Benny brews a potion for them in order to bring up their strength so that they can fight the demon Girl Scout. At the end of the episode, when they ask him what was in his potion, he confirms that it was really just his blood. Erica is shocked.
I drank Benny's blood?
Yeah, so gross.
No, you don't understand. I liked it. Sarah, it was the best. I can't stop thinking about it.
She appears a little worried that this might mean more. And look at that look back from Benny. I mean, clearly he's in love. And finally, in episode 5, we learn that both Erica and Benny have a list.
I don't care how much of a crush she has on you. She just made Benny's list.
Never mind.
You just made Erica's list.
This is sadly as far as it goes, but I really think that they were trying to lead up to something, and I was all for it. My final thoughts. I was a little worried about rewatching this at first because the movie entirely fell flat for me. The plot was just all over the place and rushed, and I really couldn't connect with the characters. I was pleasantly surprised by the show, though. As much as it was formulaic on an episode-to-episode basis, I was excited to get a few instances of long-form storytelling in the form of Jesse and the hooded shadow figure. I'm really sad that there were only 2 seasons because, as I said, it really seemed like they were gearing up to deepen the lore, not only with Ethan's growing powers, but also the little hints to certain relationships forming. Plus, we didn't get any closure on Ethan and Sarah, or even what happened to them and Benny and Jesse in the finale. I'd like to think that they somehow escaped and the future seasons would have more of Jesse driving a wedge between Ethan and Sarah. And of course, the formation and thriving of Berica. Or Ereni? Let me know where you think the story might have gone in the comments. And as always, follow me on my socials and don't forget to give this video a like and a physical thumbs up, and I'll see you later. And if you want to see me, subscribe. And thank you. Benny.